Hi, and welcome to the lecture series, Being Human. First of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Mazwick for inviting me to contribute to his lecture series. My name is Chris Casagrande. I'm a drug and alcohol counselor, but I'm not going to be talking much about drugs and alcohol, if at all, in this lecture series. As Dr. Mazwick, I believe, correctly pointed out in his first video, that addiction is not the main problem. It's the underlying pain. It is the suffering that people do, and everybody, regardless of their substance use history, does suffer. So I think we can kind of move past the addiction piece and look towards the human psychological experience, look towards how people are experiencing life, and really um, delve into that without having to talk too much about substance use disorder. Everybody has a down day every once in a while. Everybody has anxiety. Everybody has fear. Everybody goes through periods of insecurity. Um, if everybody had a deeper, more beautiful, more meaningful experience of life, I don't think substance abuse would even be a question or an option in anybody's mind. So I'm going to be talking a lot about psychology and how our experience of life unfolds, and I'm going to be talking a lot about something called the three principles or health realization, Hindu and Buddhist philosophy, a whole lot of common sense, and some from experience, from my personal experience, to kind of help people understand and manage the way that they experience life, maybe from a different angle. Um, I guess I'll start here because I've been to some dark places. My mind at times will bring me to dark places. It feels desperate. It feels hopeless. And I thought that was just something that I had to go through, something I had to figure out, something that I had to talk through. But then somebody explained it to me in a way that made so much sense that I started to see it differently. I started to see it from a different angle. And I want to share that with you and see if it helps you kind of move through some difficult periods in your life, move through some difficult feelings, maybe manage anxiety or fear or insecurity in a different way. Um, at times I go to dark places. I get upset. I get insecure. I get fearful. I get anxious about the future. It'll be almost paralyzing at times. And then, it'd be almost like I was in a canoe in the middle of the ocean, alone at night with a storm rolling in. It got choppy, it got nasty, and the wind was blowing and the waves were crashing, and I was just holding on to the canoe for dear life, just holding on, hoping that the storm would end. And then a guy by the name of Richard, one of my colleagues and mentors, he explained to me that I wasn't the guy in the canoe. He said I was actually the storm. I was just caught up in a thought storm. I was having a lot of insecure thinking, a lot of fearful thinking, a lot of desperate thinking. And I wasn't actually in any danger because I was the storm. Now, have you ever heard of a storm that's afraid of thunder and lightning? A storm that's afraid of wind or rain? Of course not. He said, but I got more good news for you. So you're not actually the storm, you're the sky. You're the consciousness in which the thought storm is playing out in. And when you understand that you are the consciousness in which the storm is playing out in, what do you care what weather's showing up? The sky can't be harmed or damaged or interfered with by any way by weather. So as you start to see that weather is not a problem, as you start to see that difficult feelings is not a problem, what do you care if the canoe tips over? Because you were never the guy in the canoe, you were never the storm, you were the sky. You were the consciousness in which that storm was playing out in. And we know you're the consciousness because once the storm moves through, you're still there. Once the difficult feelings go through, once you are less anxious, once your thinking slows down, once you're through this difficult time in your life, you're still okay. There's a part of you that's always okay. The consciousness is never not okay. So as you start to identify with not the feeling, not the thinking that's occurring to you, but the fact that you're the one doing the thinking, the fact that your thinking is being brought alive in consciousness. And consciousness is always perfect, it's always okay. It can't be harmed in any way by what's going on in the world around you. where you start to see that even in your low moments, even when you don't feel okay, you couldn't be closer to okay. You can't get to okay because you always are okay. And then thinking comes in, it tells you a story, and you get worked up, and you get anxious, and you get fearful. But that was just the storm playing out. Now, I think there's going to be a thunder and lightning storm this weekend. And what I want you to do is, when the storm gets here, what I want you to do is, I want you to go outside and I want you to stop the storm. Yep, make it stop raining, make the wind slow down. And I almost guarantee if you stay at it long enough, this will work. Right? Because the storm's only going to last so long. And the same thing is true of whatever you're going through in this moment. Whatever anxious thinking or fearful thinking or insecure thinking that's showing up, it's going to end. And it's just going to take as long as it takes to go through. But when you understand that, well, what do you care if it shows up? What can you do about the rain showing up? What can you do if there's a thunder and lightning storm? You don't have to. You were never in danger in the first place. You are always okay. Sid Banks, he said it very well. He said, people are sitting in the center of perfect psychological well-being all the time without exception. It's just nobody told them. Nobody told them that they weren't the scary thoughts that were floating through. They weren't their situation. They weren't their circumstances. They were the consciousness in which these thoughts are being brought alive in. So as you start to identify yourself as this consciousness, you start to identify yourself as the sky. And weather moves through, you move through it with a little bit more ease and a little bit more grace. Don't get me wrong, this doesn't mean bad feelings don't happen. Doesn't mean that we don't go through difficulties. Doesn't mean we don't get anxious or insecure or fearful. It just means we have a better understanding of where that's coming from and how that works. And we understand the temporary, fleeting, illusory nature of it. And we understand that we are always, always okay, just beneath the chaos of our thinking in this moment. As we start to identify with that and see ourselves as not the difficult thing that's showing up, but the platform on which the difficult thing is being played out on. You know, we think of ourselves as, if you can think of your thinking as what's on TV, you can think of yourself as the TV screen. And it doesn't really matter as a TV screen what's showing up. It could be a comedy, it could be a tragedy, it could be boring, it could be really compelling. The TV screen doesn't care. The TV screen just brings whatever you are thinking alive. So you are the TV screen, and that's what's on TV. And anybody who's ever watched TV knows that whatever is on TV is temporary, is constantly changing and shifting. So we don't live in the feeling of the world. We live in the feeling of our thinking about the world. And our thinking is constantly shifting and changing. Therefore, our experience of the world is constantly shifting and changing. So as we start to separate ourselves out from our thinking, from our feelings, even from the world around us, when we start to see ourselves as just the consciousness, as we start to see that all we are ever experiencing, all the time without exception, is thought being brought alive in consciousness in the moment, we start to have a deeper understanding of our own psychology. This is the part of the movie where Dorothy pulls the screen back and sees the wicked wizard as just a con man. And we are fantastic con men. We can get really captured by a lot of distorted thinking. We get really caught up in the thought storm without ever realizing we are the sole creative source of the storm. And we weren't just the storm, we are the consciousness in which the storm was playing out, and we were the sky. We can never not be the sky. As we wake up to this, we start to see things from a different angle. We start to see them from a little bit more clarity. We start to see that difficult things show up, but we don't have to mind as much. I'll tell you a story. I get really anxious doing public speaking. Now, I do it all the time. I run 5 or 6 groups a week for 50, 60 people. But every time I get up in front of people, I get anxious. The only difference is I don't mind. I don't mind being anxious. I see that as a temporary, fleeting illusion that I'm creating in the moment. As you start to see things like public speaking is not the problem, but the problem being us taking our thinking seriously in the moment, us not seeing thought as transient, us seeing as thought as something happening to us instead of through us, well, then we get ourselves into trouble. You see, if I have a pain in my shoulder, I don't get mad at the tree outside my house. That would make no sense. This makes no sense. The tree has nothing to do with what's wrong with my shoulders. My shoulder's telling me something that's going on within me. So you start to see that public speaking isn't a fear of speaking in public. It's talking about some disturbance going on within you, something about your internal climate, something that's wrong with you. If your check engine light comes on in your car, you don't roll down the window and yell at the guy next to you and say, hey, there's something wrong with your car, my check engine light came on. Because it's only about something wrong in your car. There's some disturbance in the way that you are thinking. You got a lot of distorted or racing or intrusive thinking showing up in the moment. But that's not happening out there. That's only always happening in here. That's always only just a product of the quality of the thinking that's occurring to us in the moment. As we wake up to the fact that we are the thinker of our thoughts, that we are the sole creative source of our experience of life, that all we are ever doing is having thought play out in consciousness. We are the consciousness. We are the stage on which our thinking is playing out. We are the TV screen and not what's on TV. We are the sky. We were never the storm. We were never in the canoe. We were never actually in danger. So we're still going to feel it. Don't get me wrong. We're going to go for an emotional roller coaster ride. But we're going to realize full well that the roller coaster ride was an illusion that we are creating in the moment. And it's okay to feel stuff. It's okay to feel everything when you know that you're not in danger. You know you're not actually in the canoe. When you know you're actually the consciousness or the sky in which thought is playing out, creating the experience. From there, you're allowed to feel everything. We all been on an emotional roller coaster ride. I know I have. Sometimes my thinking's really great. Sometimes I feel good and sometimes I feel down. And sometimes life's moving way too fast and sometimes life's moving way too slow. And I think that there's something wrong with the world or wrong with the way I'm showing up to the world. And I don't slow down to realize that this is just the way that my thinking is interpreting the world around me in the moment. And outside of my thinking, everything is perfectly okay. If you've ever been on a roller coaster, you know when you first get on the roller coaster ride and you start going up, you're not making much progress and you feel stuck. Yeah, I can feel like that in life sometimes. I feel like things aren't happening very quickly. I feel like I'm stuck. I feel like I'm kind of spinning my tires. And I know other times in life, we're way up high, right? We're way up high and we're sitting still and we have a great view and we feel good and life seems to be on our side. But what happens when we're way up high in a roller coaster ride? Yeah, we're coming down into the depths, the depression, the anxiety, the fear. And on the way down, we pick up a bunch of speed, right? Now life's coming at us way too fast. It's moving at breakneck speed. We're upside down. We're not sure what's going to happen next and we're completely overwhelmed. And then at the end of the ride, slow and close to the ground. And it's kind of nice, but that's just to start the ride over with. So we can all identify with this emotional roller coaster ride, whether it played out over minutes or it played out over hours or even days. We've all been on that ride. But what if we knew the ride was an illusion? Not thought it was an illusion, but understood that the ride was just thought playing out in consciousness. Well, yeah, we still feel stuck at times. We still feel like we're not making progress, but we just know that we are caught up in repetitious, unhelpful thinking. And then we have those highs, and those highs we meet it with a new sense of awe and gratitude. Because we understood those highs were not a product of our environment, but a product of us, a product of our thinking in that moment. And that we're always only one thought away from a completely new and better experience of the exact same thing. Yeah, at times we would go down to the depths and the depression. At times the roller coaster ride would hit those lows, but we moved through those lows with a new sense of ease and grace because we understood the temporary fleeting nature of lows. We understood the temporary fleeting nature of the roller coaster ride. We wouldn't get us too caught up in the fact that the ride dips every once in a while. And then, yeah, at times life's coming at you way too fast. It's way too quick. You're behind the eight ball. You're completely overwhelmed. Things are moving way too fast. But then you slow down and you take a step back. And you ask, is there still 24 hours in a day? Did life really speed up? Or did my thinking about life speed up? Yeah, I still have a to-do list. But my experience of the to-do list is more to do with the quality and the content of my thinking, the speed and clarity of my thinking, than it has to do with my to-do list. And yeah, when you find that clarity in a moment of anxiety, you might have too much on your plate. But this doesn't come with anxiety, this comes with relief, because you're able to push something off your plate. Or maybe you see the temporary nature of your full plate and you know that you can get through it. So the roller coaster ride shrinks down to size. We're no longer at Six Flags. Now we're at Canopy Lake Park, enjoying the roller coaster ride. From a simple understanding of how thought is playing out in the moment. Simple understanding that we are not experiencing what we think we're experiencing. Rather, we're experiencing what we think. We are not the guy in the canoe. We are not the storm. We are the sky in which the storm is playing out in. As we start to identify with that and see ourselves as that, as we start to move through life from that understanding, good and bad feelings come. Difficult feelings come. Hopeful feelings come. Love and contentment comes. But we don't judge it and we don't look for it. We just allow it to be. It's allowed to move through. The exact same way I can't do a thing about what weather's showing up today. The exact same way I can't do a thing about the waves and the wind. I don't have to. I'm not afraid of what I feel. I'm not afraid of what I think. If I could teach the entire world one thing, if I was somehow made king of the world for a day and I had to decree one thing, I would probably teach the entire world they don't have to be afraid of what they feel. I'd teach them the temporary, fleeting, illusory nature of our emotional content. I would teach them that they were perfectly okay, regardless of what thoughts or feelings are showing up. I would teach them to find that center place within them, available just underneath the chaos of their thinking, and to be able to return there whenever it occurred to them that their thinking was a little off track. The moment you see that very simple truth, you are always only one fresh new thought away from a completely different experience. In fact, if I'm right, if you're following this, if you think that this is true, that we are always just living in the feeling of our thinking, then there's absolutely no limit to how peaceful and beautiful and meaningful your experience of this very moment can become. And there's absolutely no limit to how frustrating and upsetting and disturbing your experience of this moment can become. Because there's no limit to what you can think. There's no limit to how you can feel about this moment. There's no limit to how you can experience this moment. It's always only limited by our imagination, by what thinking is occurring to us in the moment. And oh, by the way, you are the thinker of your thoughts. All that you ever are is the creative, limitless potential energy of thought taking form in the moment. And that creates all of human experience all the time without exception. And as you wake up to that and see that, where you have some autonomy, you have some, you always have a place to return to, regardless of how nasty the storm is, regardless of how big the waves are, regardless of how bad the wind's blowing. You are always just the consciousness in which it is playing out in. So yeah, let it rain. Some days it rains. Today I just let it. I don't have to fix it or overcome it or deal with it in any way. I'm allowed to feel whatever's coming up for me, and I'm not afraid of it today. When you're not afraid of what you feel, you're not afraid of your experience of life. You can get embarrassed without embarrassment having you. You can get anxious without anxiety having you. I get anxious. I just don't let it make decisions for me anymore. I don't let it dictate as to what I should do next. I see it for what it truly is. I see it as a temporary, fleeting illusion playing out in consciousness. I see it trying to dictate what I should do next. And I laugh at it because how ridiculous it was. How ridiculous it is that a temporary fleeting thought can tell me who I am, what I'm capable of, and what I should do next. That feels like a good place to end this first video. I'm gonna hopefully be contributing a lot more. I hope you guys like this, and I hope to talk to you guys again very soon.